Hare Krishna, reading from the Bhagavad Gita. The contents of the Gita summarized, chapter 2, text number 23. We're going to discuss from the perspective of the Prakriti or material energy, the nature of the soul. So, Nainam Chindanti Shastrani means that the soul cannot be cut by any weapon. Nainam dahati pavakaha. Nor can the soul be burnt by fire. Nachainam kledayantyapo. Nor can the soul be moistured by water. Nashoshayati marutaha. Nor can it be withered by the wind. So no material situation can touch the soul. The soul is the spark of immortality which drives this material body. It's very, very subtle energy, and it cannot be approached empirically. One cannot identify it through the process of experimental, laboratorial manipulation with the instruments, material instruments, microscopes, or what have you. But the materialistic scientists, the atheistic scientists, the origin of life community who are propagating atheism, they keep telling us that we're going to produce life from molecules. We're going to do it. We're going to take some chemicals and we're going to produce life as they have demonstrated in textbooks, this idea of a primordial soup 4 billion years ago or so, and some electricity went through this primordial soup of some fundamental chemicals, ammonia and so on. And gradually you got creepy crawlers coming out of this lake, so to speak, and from there the powers of evolution, natural selection on genetic mutation took over, and from one original living unicellular organism, now we have millions of species. This is the scenario explained by the atheists who dominate our world today. However, when we ask them what consciousness is, they have no idea. They're not even close to producing a living cell, a unicellular organism, by synthesizing the 4 basic building blocks of life: proteins, carbohydrates, lipids or fatty acids, and nucleic acids. They have no idea how to do this in a laboratory that's invested in very expensive, multi-million-dollar pristine instruments in a controlled laboratory, controlled environment. They haven't come even close to it, so they are bluffing. When we ask the scientists, what about love? Do you love your relatives? Do you love your family members? And they say, yes, I love my children, my grandchildren. Show me love under a microscope. They have no answer to that. So the symptom of the soul is perception of the senses, pain, pleasure, sight, the objects of seeing, form, the objects of touch, texture, and so on. So perception is there, emotions are there. These are all symptoms of the soul. Once the body dies, the soul leaves the body, there's no more consciousness, there's no more self-awareness, there's no more subjectivity, there's no more decision-making, yes or no, there's no hankering, there's no lamenting, there's no desiring, and so on. So the soul is the primal mover and the most important part of this yantra. Yantra rudani mayaya. This yantra means machine. It's a biological machine. It's made up of trillions of cells. In each cell there's the coding system called the DNA, genetic materials, which dictate within the cell all kinds of things, metabolism, how to repair, protein molecules go around repairing the mitochondria and different things. So these things are going on as we speak. So it's very ephemeral, the body is very ephemeral, but there's a constant, and that is the I am. So if we are soul and not prakriti or this inferior material energy, then it's incumbent upon us to understand what is my ultimate purpose of life. The ultimate purpose of life is described in the Bhagavad Gita, and also in the Puranas. The Srimad Bhagavad Purana is known as the ripened fruit of all Vedic knowledge. And in there it begins with the statement, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now that I have a human form of life, I should ask the question, who am I? What is my purpose in life? What is the goal of life? These are questions that every human being can ask. Animals, birds, different species, lower species, they can only ask four things: ahara, bhaya, nidra, and maitunya. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. These are the four animal propensities that humans share with the animal kingdom, insects, aquatics, and so on. But the human being is endowed with sufficient intelligence to ask the question, who am I? Where did I come from? Why is there suffering in this world? Why is there death in this world? Why is there disease in this world? And what is the solution to the real problems of life? Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, there are fourfold miseries that everyone will be experiencing. Birth, death, old age, and disease. No one can avoid these things unless, of course, they start looking for a bona fide spiritual master who has seen the truth. So in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 4th chapter, it describes, Krishna is telling Arjuna, Tadvidi pranipatina pariprashanena sevaya upadekshanti te gyanam gyananinas tattvadarshinaha. A tattvadarshi is a sage, a saintly person who sees that within all types of bodies there is a soul, and that soul is immortal. Therefore, the elephant in the room is what happens at the time of death. So in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains to Arjuna about the laws of action and reaction, the laws of karma. If we do good deeds, we can go to higher planets. But if we do transcendental deeds, if we do bhakti yoga, devotion to God, Krishna, the Supreme Soul, just as we are tiny little souls, the jivas, there is a Supreme Soul. He calls himself Paramatma within the heart. And Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita explains that further on in the 15th chapter, that he's in everyone's heart. Sarvasachaham Ridishani Vishto Matasmitir Jnanam Apohanam Cha Vadaischa Sarvair Aham Eva Vedya Vedanta Vidveda Vid Eva Chaham. He says, of all the living entities, I dwell within their hearts as a supreme person, and I fulfill their desires according to what they want. However, if they have material desires, those desires are the source of misery. If they have spiritual desires, in other words, desire to please God, desire how to serve the Lord with one's mind, one's words, one's senses, one's body, one's house, yat karoshi yadarashnasi yat juhosi dadasi yat tapasvasi kunteya tat kurushva madarpanam. Krishna tells Arjuna that whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever austerities you perform, whatever you do it in bhakti, in devotion to me. In other words, this body, which is given to us by Mother Nature, ultimately comes from the Supreme Person. And the soul, which is inhabiting this body, it's generating the life. It is a life force. And we have to come in touch with the Supreme Lord through devotion service, through engaging our senses, mind, intelligence in the service of the Supreme. This is called Bhakti Yoga, or devotional service to God. But in other words, in order for us to understand how to do this, how to practice this great science of Bhakti described in the Bhagavad Gita, we need a bona fide professor of spiritual practices. It is called a guru. But the guru has to be qualified. Of course, the disciple has to be qualified as well. What is a real guru? There's so many swamis, so many yogis that are professing they have the truth, and they go to the West and collect lots of money and misguide people. Why is that? Because they're still driven and motivated by material acquisition, followers, egotistical name and fame, and so on. So the great saints, they describe who is qualified to be a guru. Vachuvegam manasakroda vegam, jiva vegam udarupastu vegam, hetan vegan yo vishaheta dhira. Dhira means one who is extremely self-controlled, one who is grave, one who experiences the nectar of this chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra, the nectar, the pleasure, the flavor of love of this Mahamantra, this name of God, which is non-different from God, Krishna. Then one's senses become conquered. One becomes completely a master of his senses, and that is the meaning of Swami, one who's a master of his mind and senses. So in this verse, Vachu Vegam, Manasakroda Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udarapasta Vegam. This person can make disciples all over the world. Vacha, his words only are connected to glorifying the Lord and his devotees. Manasa, the mind, which is chanchala, very, very restless. Pramati, balavadridam, obstinate, strong, very strong, like the wind, Arjuna is saying. How can I control my mind? But the real guru is in control of his mind. So he has conquered the 6 enemies of the mind: lust, greed, anger, envy, illusory attachment to the material body, which is temporary, Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moha, Mada, madness. Madness is to do something which is detrimental to your well-being. Mada. In a way, identifying with this temporary body, which is simply coming to an end one day, is a kind of madness. One should understand that he is not this body. First lesson is spiritual life. I am not the body, nor am I the mind, nor am I the intelligence, but I am the soul, which is floating within the ears through the heart, within the heart. So Vachavegam, Manasakroda Vegam, Jiva, the tongue has to be controlled. So a real guru only speaks transcendental topics, and he controls his tongue. He avoids eating flesh, and everything that he eats is offered to Krishna or God. It's an offering. It's called prasadam, or food offered to God, the mercy of God, prasadam, that when God accepts these offerings, it becomes sanctified. So Jiva Vega means the tongue to eat and taste, and also the tongue to chatter. We talk about politics, social things, what people are doing, this and that. The newspapers are full of all kinds of unnecessary topics. As we see, history simply repeats itself again and again. Some political events going on, some economic events going on, some bad things happening, some good things, usually bad things. So One's tongue should always be reserved for spiritual topics, topics related to Krishna. Udaropashta, the belly and genitals also have to be controlled. So overeating is a detriment to spiritual advancement, or eating things that are tamasic, like the flesh of slaughtered animals. After all, the golden rule is thou shalt not kill. Or in the Gita, Krishna says, Patram pushpam palam toyam. He says, you simply have to offer me fruit, flower, water, and a leaf or vegetables, and I will accept. He doesn't accept flesh. Ahimsa, satyam, akrudha. He says the quality of a saintly person is non-violence to others. Sarva bhutatma bhutatma. He is a friend to all living beings, so he minimizes any type of violence imposed upon other creatures like animals and so on, birds and so on. But in today's age, the gurus, they say, you eat whatever you want, so-called gurus, so-called swamis, or you can eat the flesh of slaughtered animals. But the soul is there within the animal. The soul is there wherever there's life. Wherever there's life, there's a soul. So who are we to impinge on the rights of other creatures to live? That is called hinsa, or violence. So jiva vegam udaropasta vegam, we simply eat foods in the mode of goodness, or sattvic foods given in the 17th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Foods in the mode of passion are spicy and inflames the senses. And foods in the mode of ignorance are old, they're not very tasty, they're products of slaughtering of animals and so on. So, udaropasta vegam, upasta means the genitals. The genitals are meant to be used for the procreation of offspring. They're not meant for simply recreational pleasure. Vishya vinivartante niraharasya dehiram. Rasa varjam rasopiyasya param drisva nivartante. The spiritual devotees of the Lord, they, by controlling their senses, experience a high spiritual transcendental experience where the senses become pleased by chanting the holy names of Krishna, Rama, and Hari, or Radharani. And by doing this, the lower pushings of the senses, like the genitals and so on, gradually dissipates and reduces, so that we simply realize the sex life is meant for procreation of children, good children in the world. So there's a whole concept of that. So we don't say no sex, we say sex according to religious principles. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Kamosmi Bharatarshaba. It means that Dharma virudo bhuteshu kamosmi Bharatarshaba. He says, I am sex life, which is according to Dharma. So this is the problem in today's society today, modern westernization, or contaminated society that we live in. We're surrounded by materialism, sensual delights, and who is happy? No one can be happy unless they learn how to practice spiritual life, Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is known as the queen of all activities. Bhakti means devotion to Krishna without any motive. Not that, oh, I'm a yogi, but I need followers. Dhanam, janam, sundarim, I want followers, I want to enjoy a beautiful woman. Dhanam, I want money, I want wealth. I can teach you yoga, give me money. Look at me, I'm a multi-billionaire, millionaire. So, yesham tu patadestrinam patatam tamasihiyadaya, yeshudadan vachastevai, majanti ashma plava eva. So in the Vedas, in the Bhagavatam, it says that those persons who put their faith in a foolish leader, a leader who has no knowledge of the soul, and no knowledge of the super soul, the supreme being who is all pervading. He's everywhere. He's in every atom. Adantaracha paramanu chirantarastam. He's in every atom, between the atom. This is clearly stated in the Vedas. Not only that, but he says, Sarvasya chaham hridishani vishto, that I'm in your heart, guiding you through life. You have material desires, he will fulfill them, but you have to pay the price, karma. You can go ahead and do all kinds of things, heinous activities, horrible activities, selfish activities, greedy activities, envious activities, but you have to pay the karma later on in life. After death, you have to pay, or even in this life. So we, as spiritualists, understand the nature of ourselves. Subjective self is non-material, as it's stated here. It cannot, nainam chindanti shastrani, cannot kill the soul. You cannot kill the soul with any kind of weapon. It's unkillable. It's made of spiritual energy, Satchit Ananda. So it cannot be perceived by the empirical approach. The underlying philosophy of the modern atheistic philosophers and scientists is that all reality can be reduced down to its basic building blocks: particles, subatomic particles, atoms, molecules. And all reality is governed by the laws of physics. Weak forces, strong nuclear, gravitation, all these different things. That is a way of restricting themselves from the approaching a spiritual person, a spiritual professor, a spiritual scientist, a person who knows that there is also a reality within ourselves that cannot be approached empirically. We cannot reduce life. It is there constantly. The I am never changes. Although we see a person goes through janma, dehinosmin yatadehe komaram yovanam jara, that the living body, dehina, goes through childhood, then youth, then old age, and then death. Tata pratyas, dearest teacher. But the spiritual person who has spiritual education and knowledge, who has wisdom, he is not bothered at the time of death. He is not bewildered because he is tattvadarshi. He understands who he is and who everyone else is. Yatapakashyanti yesham Krishnam loka imam ravi. Just as the sun illuminates the entire universe with light and heat, Shecham Shecha Tata Kritsnam Prabhavanti Prakashyanti Sarvashaha. So the soul illuminates the entire body with self-awareness, just as the sun illuminates the entire universe with light and heat. That is the analogy given by Krishna in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So this is the most important information that one can acquire, and one has to try to find a bona fide spiritual master who can help one on his spiritual journey. And ultimately, yatadehantaras, at the time of death, antakale chamamiva, if we develop our love for God, then when we die, the time of death, we can go to the spiritual abode where there's no more birth, death, old age, or disease. And that means you have fulfilled the purpose of your human life. So that is the meditation today. The soul is invisible, it's inconceivable, it's immutable. And knowing this, why grieve for the body? Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha. One who's taken birth is sure to die. And after one dies, one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, the unavoidable discharge of duty, why lament for this body? So thank you, Hare Krishna.